Listen, guys, I don't make videos like this very often at all. Most of the time, I am in the weeds here on the channel. I'm going through different stat lines. I'm talking about players that are on the practice squad, players that were undrafted rookie free agents, things like that. So I don't have a whole lot of fun here. I hope that you show up anyway, but today, what we have is a nonsensical and hapless mainstream media run through. No, I'm not talking about Joy Taylor. What we have is a listing from CBS Sports whereby Kansas City is the 11th ranked team at the end of the regular season. Now, this is an ABC grade, so you can say, how are they the 11th ranked team? Well, because there are 11 teams with a grade higher than the Kansas City Chiefs, which seems nonsensical at the very start, but really, you could have them ranked lower if there are other teams with their same grade. So what I want to do is go ahead and run through all of these teams. I'll make a couple points about each of them, and then we will talk about... So the final team on this list before the Kansas City Chiefs may have had... I might go ahead and give it to them because this is the wildest season that I have ever seen, possibly in the entirety of the NFL when you take all of context into account. But we're going to start here where the article itself starts with the title, Sorting the Sunday Pile, Week 18 season-long grades for every NFL team from the Lions A+ down to the Jets F-, grading every single team's full season from CBS Sports by Will Brinson. Now, I want to sprinkle on a little bit of helper beforehand. This is going to be taking context into consideration. So, were the Kansas City Chiefs supposed to have a very good season? Yes, then it's hard to grade them to an A or an A+ when they had a very good season. Of course, they kind of had an historic season. So, we'll get there. Starting off with the Lions, saying an A+, incredible season for Detroit, the best in franchise history. Dan Campbell's vision came to life as the Lions exploded on offense throughout the season and stepped on the gas when they needed it most. Winning their final two games to secure the division and number one seed, it's now Super Bowl or bust for Jared Goff and company. 15-2, without a Patrick Mahomes. Fair enough. But here's where we need to make our first delineation. The Lions were supposed to be good coming into the season. The Lions went 15-2. The Lions got an A+. All of those things check out. So you would think that a team that is supposed to be very good and goes 15-2 and wins their division, they should get an A+. Right? Number 2, the Bills. A, this team did everything but land the top seed in the AFC, and that was more thanks to the Warlocks in Kansas City than it was a fault of their own. Josh Allen played at an MVP level all season despite losing his top pass catcher in the offseason. The offense dominated across lost his top pass catcher in free agency, right? Not injury. The offense dominated across the full year, and the defense was substantially better than most expected. The field is too deep for him to win, but Sean McDermott deserves Coach of the Year love. Now, Buffalo just has to validate things in the postseason. This is where we start to have some differences. The Buffalo Bills are graded an A. The Buffalo Bills went 13-4. Certainly not a bad year. 4 losses, though. They got beat by the Ravens 35-10. And they suffered a loss to the 10-7 Rams. Not to mention the season-ending loss to the Patriots, but you didn't have to have that one, right? You didn't have to have that one. You didn't play to win that one. That's excusable. 13-3. However, if you just excuse that final loss, with a 25-point loss, with a loss to a 10-7 team along the way, okay. but you had better be grading on a curve when it comes to a certain team from the Midwest. Broncos, A. Sean Payton kicked Russell Wilson to the curb, taking on the largest dead cap hit in NFL history in the process, replaced him with what many felt was an overdrafted rookie quarterback. I myself thought Bo Nix was overdrafted. Bo Nix and NBSP, I don't know what that means, at number 12 overall. And promptly broke Denver's 8-year playoff drought. Outstanding season, no matter how it ends, and certainly promising for the future in Denver. Yes, the Broncos are probably 2 years ahead of where they were probably supposed to be, expected to be, 2 years ahead of schedule with their rebuild process there in Denver. They still went 10-7. Hard to go 10-7, get graded an A, and have teams rated below you that had multiple wins more than you did and beat you when their starters were on the field, i.e. the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs beat the Broncos when they had to. The Kansas City Chiefs have not yet appeared on this list. Moving on. Number 4, the Eagles. In A lot of offseason turmoil, attrition expectations. A lot of offseason turmoil, attrition expectations. I'm not sure that's English. But Nick Sirianni guided the team to a number 2 seed in the NFC with 2 new coordinators. Saquon Barkley was one of the premier offensive additions, exploding for historic numbers behind an offensive line that lost Jason Kelce. Howie Roseman's draft additions on defense paid huge dividends, and the Eagles look like a balanced problem heading into the postseason, a far cry from the team that wilted towards the end of 2023. It's difficult for the Eagles, right? 14-3, sure, that's a very good season. It's hard to lose to the Falcons. And find yourself with an A on the season, and get drubbed 33-16 by the Buccaneers, and get an A on the season. And, by the way, heading into the postseason, I hope they don't see Jaden Daniels again. 5 touchdowns? That'll be difficult to beat in the playoffs. The Eagles had a hiccup last season. Should the Eagles' expectations have actually been higher heading into this season? I would think that the Eagles would be a B grade for this year. 14-3, yeah, but you still got a little bit of stinging on your back end from the previous spanking. Now, the next team on this list is the Ravens, which will almost undoubtedly rile you. An A for the Ravens season. A sluggish, questionable start was quickly turned around. What happened in that start? They lost to the Chiefs, that's right. With the Ravens becoming just the second team in NFL history to trail their division lead by multiple games and still up winning it by multiple games. Lamar Jackson is a legitimate MVP candidate and, frankly, could even steal it from Allen, yet again. And the pairing of Lamar with Derrick Henry was an off-season personnel masterstroke. In-season adjustments took this team from a fringe wildcard squad to one of the Super Bowl favorites. 12-5 is pretty good. They lost to the Raiders and the Browns. You lose to the Raiders and the Browns and find a way to lose 3 more games. I guess you can get an A on the season, but you'd better not be higher than any teams who didn't lose to an embarrassing team like the Raiders or the Browns, let alone the both of them. Next on the list, something that'll chap your hiney, the Chargers got an A on the season. Saying Jim Harbaugh did Jim Harbaugh things, once again taking over a franchise that has traditionally been super sloppy and turning them into a playoff team in his first year at the helm. Justin Herbert's evolution over the course of the season was impressive. They turned him into Elvis Gerbach. I mean, all right. And this team is a physical manifestation of Harbaugh himself, playing tough defense, not making mistakes, and running the ball physically despite perhaps lacking in personnel. Guys like Quentin Johnston improving immediately shows the Harbaugh effect fully. I, however, will not allow this. If you were taking this season into the context of all of those things that were expected coming into this season, well, everyone thought the Chargers were finally going to win the division for about the 19th consecutive season. The Chargers were the preseason favorites everywhere you looked. Oh, the Chiefs, there's no way you can win 3 in a row. No one's ever done it. There's a reason why. The Chiefs' stranglehold on the AFC West will finally be overturned, they said. There's nothing like having a Harbaugh in the division, they said. All right, guys, but that doesn't mean you get to then go 11-6 and get an A when the team that won the division did not. I thought they were supposed to win the division this year. 2 of their 6 losses were to the Chiefs. 2 of their 6 losses were to the Chiefs, who have not yet appeared on this list, and the Rams, and the Steelers, and the Cardinals, and the Ravens, and the Bucs. Wait, that doesn't make sense. I took a wrong note somewhere. However, they lost to the Buccaneers 40-17. 40-17. Is that right? It doesn't matter. I can't allow the Chargers to be on this list here. I don't know what I'm going to do about it, but I can't allow it. Next, the Commanders. They didn't win the division, but the Eagles were squatting on a big lead. More importantly, the Commanders found the guy in Jaden Daniels, who looks like a truly legitimate franchise quarterback with the ability to play his best in the most important moments. Washington appeared ready to sort of collapse late, but let's credit Dan Quinn for righting the ship and ensuring they made the playoffs. 10 wins in his first year for a franchise with a long, recent history of being extremely meh has this fan base re-energized and the building blocks in place for long-term success. Great season no matter what happens next. 12-5, easily 3 years ahead of schedule. They lost to the Buccaneers 37-20. They lost to the Cowboys. Hard to lose to the Cowboys, but it's a rivalry game. And look, you want to give the Commanders an A for the season, I'll allow it. You've got to explain decisions for teams you put below an A. However, and no amount of self-effacing humor will make up for good reasoning. So, just going to foreshadow that. Next team here, the Vikings, 14-3. So, the only thing marring a 14-win season is a lack of division title and the lackluster performance Sunday night against the Lions in what was a moment for the Vikings to really establish themselves as a big boy in the conference. They've got the personnel to do damage and are favored in the wild card round against the Rams. But Sam Darnold and NBSP, I don't know what that means, crumbling on the biggest stage against a banged-up Detroit defense definitely raises a red flag. Still, Kevin O'Connell got the most out of his situation as he appears to do every year, wildly outperforming expectations after losing Kirk Cousins in free agency this offseason and seeing J.J. McCarthy go down with an injury during the preseason. 14-3. Fair enough. That's an A-level season. They lost their QB, their number 1 QB. That's very impressive to lose your number 1 QB and end up 14-3. They had a 6-game win streak to begin the season. You remember they were one of the last remaining undefeated team with the Kansas City Chiefs. They lost that, and then they went on a 9-game win streak after. However, the article here mentions that they lost that final week of the season game to Detroit. They lost both times to Detroit. That's hard to justify an A when you lose both showings with a divisional rival who is going to be there in the postseason. Penultimately on this list, the Rams. That's right, the Rams. Winning the division after a 1-4 start is a testament to Sean McVay's coaching, especially in a year where Matthew Stafford played really well in short bursts but maybe wasn't at his absolute pinnacle as a signal caller. They overcame injuries to both Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua to win a division title in the really stout NFC West, and have now put together kind of a similar season to when they won the Super Bowl, which is an interesting point. No one should be stunned if this team gets hot in the postseason. So, upon what are you basing your expectations here? Upon what are you giving this a grade? I thought that it was based on basically preseason expectations compared to the end-of-season results. I thought the Rams were supposed to be a 10-7 type team. So to give them credit for starting in a hole and then digging themselves out of it is very, very, that's a tough row to hoe. No, I'm not. Okay. Not talking about, okay. They started 0-3 and then moved to 1-5. 0-3, 1-3, then they lost 2 consecutive. One of the 2 that they lost there was to the Bears. You want to give that team an A? Then you have, my friend, some splaining to do. Beat the Bills, though, so thank you. And finally, the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers lost their offensive coordinator, and I'll get to the Chiefs after this. The Buccaneers lost their offensive coordinator this season, and Baker Mayfield improved, having maybe the best year of his career and looking incredibly comfortable in Tampa. Losing Chris Godwin stings, but Jalen McMillan is looking like a steal in the draft as a compliment to Mike Evans. And Bucky Irving is a bona fide star in year 1. We can ding them for some ugly losses, including late in the year to Dallas to open up the division for Atlanta. But this team is coming into the playoffs hot. The Buccaneers could be a problem in the wrong matchup. Listen to this. The Buccaneers who went 10-7, okay, keep that in mind. The Buccaneers were not an elite team. The Buccaneers lost 7 games this season. They opened the year by beating the Commanders 37-20 in what no one knew was going to be an impressive win. Then they beat the Lions 20-16. They were one of 2 teams to beat the Lions this year. They beat the Lions 20-16 in another win that no one knew was going to be as impressive as it ended up being. Then they lost to the Broncos by 19 points, 26-7. Then they beat the Eagles 33-16. Then they lost to the Falcons 36-30. Then they dropped a 50 burger 51-27 over the Saints. The very next week they lost to the Ravens 41-31. Then they lost to the Falcons again by 5 points, 31-26. Then they lost to the Chiefs 30-24. No shame in that. Then they lost to the 49ers 23-20. Then they beat the Giants 30-7. Then they beat the Panthers 26-23. Then they beat the Raiders 28-13. Then they beat the Chargers 40-17. Yeah, I was right with the Chargers. Beat the Chargers 40-17 before losing to the Buccaneers to the Cowboys 26-24. Then they beat the Panthers 48-14. They almost scored 50 points twice this year. Then they beat the Saints 27-19. absolutely the most unpredictable team in the NFL. That is one of the wildest rides I have ever seen for a fan base. You have wins over probably four of the best teams in the NFL, right? The Eagles, the Lions, maybe you count the Commanders, and the Bills, or the Chargers and the Bills, right? Am I making something up now? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who they beat. Some of the most impressive teams in the NFL, they throttled some of the most impressive teams in the NFL, and then they lost both times to the Falcons. Absolute wild one there for the Buccaneers. So I think you give that team an A just for the experience that was the season. Now, after all of those A pluses, all of those A's, we get to the team that got a B plus, residing here in Kansas City. A B plus for 15-2? Yeah, that's what happens when the entire world thinks the NFL has rigged things in your favor to land a three-peat and you don't score more than 30 points once in a single season. Okay, so once in a single season, that's a weird statement to make. Were they supposed to score 30 plus in multiple seasons this season? Just kind of an amateur line there. Okay, I don't know if you were smoking the reefer or what, but that line's kind of weird in retrospect. No one actually thinks that the NFL, no one worth listening to, actually thinks that the NFL is cooking the books in the Chiefs' favor. No one worth listening to doesn't think we went to the moon. Some of you just tuned out. I can't believe you are trying to justify giving the Kansas City Chiefs the 11th best grade in the NFL based on superstitions, based on conspiracy theories. Absolute malarkey. Absolute wild stupidity. Didn't score more than 30 points? Do we hold any other part of the football team to this standard? I can't grade the Buffalo Bills an A. Their defense didn't hold an opposing team under 10 points for the entire season. No. Didn't score more than 30 points a single time. They didn't have to. They didn't have to. They never had to. Well, I think they didn't have to. The bar is really high for the Chiefs, and while they ended up tied for the best record in football, they didn't exactly do it in incredible fashion. Number one, they ended up tied for the best record in football because they didn't have to play the Broncos. Guys, I got 9 reps at defensive end versus the Broncos in that final game. They didn't have to play the final game of the regular season. You mean to tell me you don't believe the Kansas City Chiefs would have won 16 games this season if they actually had wanted to? Okay. I don't believe you, but okay. You don't give the team that tied for the best record in all of the NFL an A? Absolute stupidity. Fashion. Judging fashion. Okay, well, have you seen Travis Kelce walking into the stadium on Sundays? I'm just saying. If Patrick Mahomes and company turn it on offensively during the playoffs and win another title, no one will be surprised. Giving them a B plus because no one would be surprised if they won the Super Bowl? What a mush-mouth, mealy-mouthed, weird little nubbin thing to say. But this felt like a luck-fueled record in somewhat of a cruise control season. If you can cruise control your way to 15-2 in the NFL, You absolutely deserve an A for that season. Even if there were a lot of injuries on offense to overcome. So despite the fact that they were a mash unit, they cruise controlled to 15 wins. And that's not as impressive as the Chargers going 11-6. That's not as impressive as the Broncos going 10-7. All right. Well, what an absolutely worthless conjumble of words. I think I made that up. That is all I have for this episode. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.